What's going on, everybody? It's your old pal Shred Riffs. In this video, we're going to take a look at two very cutting-edge noise gates for guitar. We've got the Boss NS1X pedal right here. Next to that, we've got the Void Manufacturing Endless Blockade. We're going to put these two bad boys side by side, and we're going to discover which one really tames the insane amount of gain that I'm about to throw at it. Stick around, you're not going to want to miss this video. Alright guys, so in the first part of this video, I'm going to explain why I think you need a noise gate. So if you're using a pedal like this, like the Boss HM2, or maybe an overdrive pedal boosting the front end of your already high gain tube amplifier or solid state amp or digital setup, if you're throwing more gain or more level at the front end of your amp, chances are you're going to get a lot of hiss, and there's going to be a lot of noise and squeaks and squeals when you're trying to play at medium to loud volumes on stage or even while you're recording. Okay, all of that hiss sound is super annoying, and I find it to be very distracting when I'm recording even. In addition to that, what I've been doing lately, as I've been making a lot of these different metal videos on my channel, and I'm throwing like tons and tons of gain at my amplifier and, you know, shaping my amp in all of these different ways with pedals, I find that having a noise gate of some sort while I'm recording really helps me a lot. Eases my mind a little bit. And it also makes editing my guitar tracks later on, like if there's a lot of stops in my guitar playing, it helps kind of streamline that editing process so I can really see where all of the stops are. Or if the noise gate is super tight and silent in general, chances are I don't even have to edit out any of those spaces in between those stops in my playing, and I think that's awesome. I know there are other theories about how to get a lot less noise out of your rigs, like from guys like John Petrucci, who actually uses the same amp that I have here. He sets his gain on his rhythm channel to like right about here, or sometimes maybe here. And so I've pretty much matched his settings for the most part with this graphic EQ, but he doesn't use a lot of gain. And so Petrucci says that you don't need a noise gate. I tend to disagree, at least for the stuff that I play, extreme death metal, black metal kind of stuff where I'm using outboard pedals to boost the amp. I find that having a noise gate is really great. And then other guys like Kirk Hammett uses like Mesa Mark series amplifiers as well, or at least did in Metallica many years ago. But he set his gain like really low, like way over here. And he's one of those guys that says, hey, you just don't need a lot of gain. But that's not me. I like to use distortion, fuzz, overdrive pedals, and all of those different things that you guys have seen me play on this channel to get more interesting sounds, okay? I really like using sounds that other people don't have. That's kind of a big part of what I enjoy doing and what I enjoy about playing guitar. Okay, so in comes the modern day noise gate. So I'm not talking about the Boss NS2, which is also a great pedal, or even like the ISP decimator stuff, like the G pedal. I'm not talking about that. These two guys actually provide nearly dead silence to actual dead silence in between your high gain guitar chugs. And I just think that is incredible that they've been able to do this with the technology in these pedals. And later on in this video, I'm going to talk about the specific technology that these pedals use and what makes it kind of special. Another thing that I wanted to mention is that my personal guitar hero, Alan Holdsworth, he is a notable noise gate user, even on his lead tone. So he would use a compressor, like a DBX compressor, as well as a noise gate to make it so that when he pressed the string up against the fret, the note would sound, okay, with a very light touch. Okay, and then as soon as he takes that finger off of that note, it's silent, okay? And I think that's amazing. And he would kind of dial in his amplifier so that it would have this saxophone-like characteristic to it. So I've attempted to get something kind of close to that with the JP2C, and so I end up kind of turning up the 750 and the 220 and then knocking down some of the highs to achieve that. And then I'll put, you know, some type of overdrive pedal in front of that to get that really nice push lead sound. And then you throw a noise gate in the mix, into the effects loop as well, which both of these pedals do. And you have near dead silence in between your musical phrases if you're soloing. And then if you throw a reverb or delay after that, you get to hear that beautiful reverb and delay trails when you cut off a note, or when that noise gate rather triggers and silences your guitar sound after you've played something and creates that effect. And I really love that interaction between the guitar itself, the gain structure of the amp, and then the effects. I just think it provides a beautiful amount of space, especially when you're using a very high gain lead tone like the one I just described. And I think if you're a jazz guitar improviser or any type of guitar improviser, I think you would probably agree that the space between your notes is just as important as the notes that you play. Okay, so what I'm gonna do now is walk you through the features and the technology of the Boss NS1X. This pedal came out a couple months ago. It really is the first pedal noise gate that Boss has put out in over like 30 years. Like, I think the NS2 has been around since the late 80s, and that's a fantastic pedal. I've used it. It's kind of like something like a VHS cassette tape compared to what this thing and the Endless Blockade does for your guitar sound. But let's talk about what that technology actually is and why I think it's great and really cool. So the NS1X uses this type of technology that Boss recently developed. It's called the MDP technology, which stands for multi-dimensional processing, which analyzes the level coming from your instrument, the overtone structure, and the frequency characteristics. So that's some really sciencey stuff right there. So the best way that I can explain it is to imagine when you're chugging away on the low strings of the guitar and you set up your amp a certain way, for example, that nice, low end chug comes in because you're palm muting. Okay, but then if you try to use that same sound and you play some lead stuff on your guitar, you get into some wheedly-wheedlies, it sounds really thin and tinny. So Boss decided that they wanted to do something about that with their X series of pedals. So they have like a compressor, a distortion, the noise suppressor. There's a couple other ones that I can't remember off the top of my head. Basically, when you plug into those pedals, it's gonna measure all of those variables, the aspect of the timbre of how you play the pickups, the string gauges. It measures all of that information, processes it, and then creates a tone that you can shape with the controls. It's just going to sound better so that when you go up for those lead notes, you're not losing all of that bass. So it's kind of like a distortion pedal, for example, that morphs in these different ways based on what you're playing. And the NS1X kind of does that, but it's a noise gate. Certain type of chipset technology that they're using that does a lot more measuring of your specific guitar playing, and then you set the controls to that. End result is way better than using a traditional stomp box pedal. So there are 3 modes on this pedal. There is a mute mode, which simply just silences your guitar sound. So if you want to use this as a mute switch, you can, for in between songs or guitar changes or anything else like that. Basically, it's not going to pass any sound through or anything you put before this pedal if you have the mute switch engaged. The second mode is the reduction mode, which is basically just going to cut down on any noise that you have, and then you use the damp, threshold, and decay controls to dial in, how much of that reduction that is required in your setup. Okay, and then the last mode is for idiots like me that like to use a crap ton of gain and like to play down-tuned gent riffs and things like that. You can set this thing up to just really clip and silence anything that you don't want after the notes that you're playing. One thing that this pedal excels at is it allows you to do sweeping, tapping, all of that kind of light touch guitar playing. This thing is going to measure the sensitivity that you throw at it and calculate that and allow those notes to go through, but take out the noise that is unwanted. So I'm a huge Boss pedal fan. It was like the first pedal that I got as a kid. It was a Boss DS1, and then I got the Super Overdrive, plugged that into my Marshall, and lately I've been collecting these Wazacraft pedals. I just think they're absolutely fabulous. Made in Japan, made with the highest quality components that they can get. The X series, even though they're not made in Japan, they're made in Malaysia. They seem to be made quite well as well. And check out this beautiful sparkle finish that's on here. That's just straight up sick. So one more time, the smart pedals from Boss are going to analyze picking, dynamics, register, string gauge, chords, and single notes, wound or plain strings, and other factors of your guitar's timbre. Each of the X series pedals from Boss focuses on these different effects and hopes to make the sounds coming out of the pedals react to your playing and just function way more effectively than conventional pedals. And I think that's really freaking cool. Go Boss. All right, guys, so here's how I have the NS1X set up. So my guitar is going to go into the tuner first, then into the input of the NS1X, into the output, and then through the super overdrive into the front of the amp. And then as Boss suggested in their owner's manual for this pedal, I'm going to run an additional distortion pedal. In this case, it's the Boss HM2 Waza. We're running that through the loop here, basically to try to do the same setup that I did with the Endless Blockade. So let's check it out. It's the most similar setup for comparison purposes with these two pedals. So let's check this out. Okay, so what we're going to do now is talk about the Endless Blockade from Void Manufacturing, the company formerly known as Lone Wolf Audio. Joe Anastasio has put together a new chipset. If you remember what I was talking about earlier with Alan Holdsworth, this pedal actually does some of that compression and gating in one pedal, and I think that's really sick. So what Joe says about this pedal is that with the Endless Blockade, you get more range, more sensitivity, and more dynamics thanks to a brand new gating IC. So this is a studio grade, massively high headroom noise gate built on the idea of decreasing noise without sacrificing sustain. The Endless Blockade features a gate trigger called a padlock, which allows another source to open and close the gate. There are 3 controls on this pedal. The gate control features simultaneous compression and noise gate threshold control, allowing you to maintain your picking dynamics and sustained notes for leads and dive bombs while eliminating background noise. So that's what this control is right here. This next control, the range control, is a sweepable control that sets the padlock input's overall master effect. So you can blend in how much of this affects the input trigger. The shift control is a sweepable fine-tuned gate control. So it interacts with this control over here so that pinch harmonics and other techniques like sweeping and tapping don't get lost in the mix. As far as the Endless Blockade is concerned, the setup is slightly different. You're going to go into a tuner, which will serve as a buffer first, into the top right of the Endless Blockade, out of the top left into your effects pedals chains. We're going to use the same 2 pedals that we used with the NS1X, and then you're going to go into the bottom right of the Endless Blockade, and then from here we're going to go into the input. This thing is made to work with different setups, so you could use the bottom 2 to go into your effects loop, but with the JP2C, the effects loop works a little bit different on this amplifier, so we're not going to use it that way. So Joe suggested running this setup. So that's what we're going to check out now. Here we go. Guys, thank you so much for checking out my video on the Endless Blockade and the NS1X noise gates. Hopefully by watching this video, you discovered which one works the best for you or which one you might want to get to tame the gain, to tame all the hiss and noise that may be existing in your guitar rig. If you guys like what I'm doing on this channel, I would really appreciate it if you could slam the like button, turn the notifications from personalized to all, like this video, and leave me a comment. Let me know which noise gate you thought was the best. My name is Drew Creal. Thank you so much for watching this video, and I'll be looking forward to seeing you in the next one. Wherever you're at in the world today, have an awesome day.